Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're taping here in the Hollywood Museum on Highland Avenue in the heart of Hollywood. And I'm here with author Charlie Scheips and director Aliah Whitmore. Curator, author Charlie Scheips was born and raised in New York City. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Art History from Ripon College and a Master in American Studies from Columbia University. He loves to travel and has spent lots of time in England and France. He's written a number of books, many books, but you've also right, but you've also written a lot of pieces for Harper's Bazaar, Vogue, Vanity Fair, and publications in America and Europe. He's the founding director of the Condé Nast Archives, where he located some of the photographs for his book Elsie de Wolf's Paris. So, how did you start that archives? Because I think that's an important place to start.
Sure. In the late 90s, on the dawn of the digital age, I sort of fell into finding myself in what was then called the Condé Nast morgue. They didn't even call it an archive yet. And
were you researching?
No, my partner Tom was hired by the library to go through a bunch of their archival materials. And he had been there for about 6 months working for the library. And the magazines didn't really care about their past. They cared about the next issue of the magazine. So it was too hard for people even to find a picture because there was 100 years of images.
Oh, they couldn't go through.
No, it would take too much time, so it was easier to say no than yes. And I walked in one day and got a tour of these things, and I started opening up file cabinets and, you know, hundreds of Steichen photographs of all the great film stars of Hollywood, the great fashion images, all the great photographers, and I said, do these people know what they have here? And it was also when the photography market, the fine art collecting photography market, had really expanded. So one thing led to another, and I wrote a memo saying how I thought we should mine this amazing archive, one of the truly extraordinary archives of the 20th century culture. Vogue, Vanity Fair, House and Garden, all the magazines.
Way back, wasn't
going
it
back to 1892, where Vogue was founded in 1892.
It went back that far?
Yes. And
wow.
So I wrote a memo that bounced up finally up to Mr. Newhouse's office, and the next thing I knew, I was the director of this project that we had decided to digitize the archive so we could take care of our collection.
Oh, that's how you did it. You digitized every photograph?
Well, it's still going on. I left a decade ago, and it's still going on today. Because
you were there 10 years?
I was there for a decade.
And Tom?
And Tom was there for a decade as well, and he was really on the library side, but I ended up hiring armies of freelancers and registrars to take care of the collection, to digitize, to scan. And that subsequently led to people like Anna Wintour hiring me to do the Millennium issue of Vogue and Vanity Fair Hollywood. Lots of books that people know now came out of that work.
Right, right. And that one of the books was American Fashion?
Yes. Well, that was right after I left Condé Nast. Originally, I was hired as the photo editor for a book on the history of American fashion. And an editor, a fashion person, was supposed to be writing the text. I conceptualized the whole thing. Amazingly, there had never been written a book on the history of American fashion, and I conceptualized that I thought it actually had been born not only in New York but also in Hollywood.
Oh, right, and here we are at the Hollywood Museum.
Yes.
I know you walked around this room and you saw so many photographs.
Yeah, it was like I was back in the archive, but I sort of set the birth of American fashion, of real homegrown American fashion, in 1929 with the crash, and so I conceptualized the book so well and had a whole team of photo editors helping me that when the fashion editor who was supposed to write the book took a look at all of my work, she says, "Oh my God, Charlie knows so much more than me," and so I ended up writing the book as well.
And you also wrote books on Andy Warhol.
Andy Warhol, David Hockney,
Right.
Guy
And you
Bourdain, Guy Bourdain.
Oh, that's right. Okay, talking about Guy Bourdain, I
Joan
remember.
Quinn.
Right. Yay. But I remember Guy Bourdain, we went to a wonderful dinner. Then you became the chief head of photography at Philips Puree.
Right, Philips Dupree.
Philips Dupree, and you were in London.
I was both in London and New York, and I liked many aspects of the business, but I did not really like the auction business. It was too much about sales and not enough about content.
But you brought so many people in, like that huge party was
Yes.
in London. It was fantastic.
I brought Annie Leibovitz. We did a big show with Annie Leibovitz. It was fun. I never regretted doing any of the things I've done.
You mentioned Hockney, and you worked as an assistant to him during the 80s.
Yes.
And did that also give you an interest in photography?
Oh, sure. I mean, David's had a lifelong love-hate relationship with photography. And when I was particularly working for him was the time when he was doing all those great photo collages.
So I just see so much of photography in your background.
Yes, I know. I started out as a fine artist and wanted to be a painter, but somehow or other I'm a big photography person. And now if you told me when I was a 12-year-old boy that I'd be an expert in fashion, I would have never believed you, but I know that too now.
But now you know fashion, you know, but I think so much of it hinges like the total picture. Living in New York, curating shows for Hockney in France,
Right,
which
Chicago.
you did. Tell us about that.
I did David's first show of his iPhone and iPad drawings at the Pierre Berger Yves Saint Laurent Foundation in 2010.
But that brought me back to also for photographs. iPad is a photo image, isn't it?
We actually, all of the images in the exhibition were emailed into the iPads.
So
it was, so I do have this long life, and what happened, interestingly, with the new book was that I had conceptualized when I was at Condé Nast doing a book on a guy named John McMullen, who was the social writer for Vogue in the 20s and 30s, who was a great friend of Elsie de Wolfe. So I spent a great decade of research on him.
I remember you were talking about John. Whatever happened to that book?
Well, I'm still working on it because other things have come up. But what happened was I suddenly stumbled upon, about 3 years ago, a cache of photographs by William Vandervert, who was a big-time live photographer, and they were on the Getty Images website, but they were all listed Lady Mendel's Party, January 1st, 1939, and nobody was identified. And I thought, oh my God, it's not January 1st, it's actually July 1st, because the French put their dates in different order, and I knew who all these Cecil Beatons and all these people in the pictures were, and a couple days later, I have a good visual memory, and I've worked on a lot of fashion shows, and I thought, oh my God, I think I've seen that dress. And indeed, 4 or 5 of the dresses I had found were in the permanent collection of the Metropolitan Museum. And I thought, wouldn't this be cool to do an exhibition where you could see society people at one of the grand parties in Paris in the 30s, and then actually see what the original garments looked like and who they were by.
And that was
the impetus, sort of how this started.
But that was all your research for John, for the other writer.
Yes, because Johnny McMullen was pretty much remembered. He died here in Hollywood in 1944.
Oh, he did die
at
here.
age 56. He was from a founding family of San Francisco. Both sides of his family were founding family members, and he went to the Académie des Beaux-Arts in Paris, and right after the World War, the earthquake of 1906, where he certainly met Elsie de Wolfe then, because she was already famous. And one of her first gigs after she did the Colony Club in New York, the great women's club, was the Crocker family had lost their house in San Francisco to the earthquake, and she decorated New Place, which is now the Burlingame Country Club up in...
Okay, let's go back to the Colony Club.
Right.
Colony Club, did she found it, or did she...
She was a founder.
She was a founder,
But
and that's
Stanford
a woman's...
White,
it was a woman's
club. It was the first women's club in America, and her girlfriends, Bessie Marbury, who was one of her very close intimate friends, she was one of the leading literary agents, but from a very fancy old New York family. Anne Morgan, the daughter of J.P. Morgan, and Anne Vanderbilt, the widow of the Vanderbilt fortune. And these ladies and others got together and put together this club and hired Stanford White, the great architect, to design it. And he had seen how Elsie had decorated her house that she shared with Bessie in Irving Place, where she sort of got rid of all Victorian clutter and made it much more modern. He said, she's the girl for me. She did the Colony Club. It put her on the map instantly, and then every robber baron from New York to California and then later Europe wanted an Elsie de Wolfe interior.
Interior, so that...
she launched the interior decoration profession.
Okay,
really.
that's what I wanted to know. Who was she? Which you just answered.
Yeah, well, she was also fascinating because she lied about her age a great deal. She was actually born, I prove in my book, from the 1860 census. She was born in 1858 before the Civil War and died in 1950 during the atomic age. So she saw quite a lot of changes.
She did, and she was between America and Europe.
Yeah, I say she was a jet setter before they invented the jet plane.
And how did she go back and forth?
By ship. It was eight days usually instead of 8 hours to get across the Atlantic, and she thought nothing of going back and forth. She was a totally self-made woman. She was from a prominent middle-class doctor's family, but her father died, leaving the family penniless. So in the 1880s, she became a professional actress and was not known as a great thespian, but she was known for wearing Paris couture on stage, so she made quite a name for herself.
So she had already been in Paris buying clothes,
yes.
befriending, I guess, the couture
designers. Her mother's cousin was married to the chaplain at Balmoral, the Queen Victoria's house, and she was able to bow at court during the Queen Victoria's reign as this American.
So she had a big presence in London,
yeah, and
England
she was famously ugly. She said she was born ugly, and she wanted to create beauty all around her, but she had great style. She did everything first. She did plastic surgery, she did injections, vitamins, exercise, yoga.
It's so funny because I'm glad you said that. I looked at a couple of pages in this book, which is fantastic. I mean, this is your ultimate
I'm most proud of it.
Tabletop book, right? And I'm looking at her and thinking, she's so unattractive.
Well, I think she was considered on the best dressed list international because of her style.
Yes.
She was very influential in even backing financially Mamboche. And
she was. Did she have that kind of money at that time?
She was one of the most successful people in the world. I mean, she had a client named Paul-Louis Vaileur, who was one of the richest men in France, who actually started Air France. He was an industrialist. He was Greta Garbo. He had so many houses in France that Greta Garbo nicknamed him Paul Louis Quatorze because he was so rich. And he loved Elsie. Elsie decorated most of his houses around France.
So did she get people like that to invest in her friends?
Yeah, she had the genius of getting money out of other people for her reasons.
So who else did she influence? Because I know she was a big influence on...
She is a very unique person. She's considered the great first lady of decoration, still to this day.
Just for decor, interior decor.
Yes, but she was, by the 1920s, decades before people like Martha Stewart were branding their image, she was endorsing Thomas Edison radios and automobiles and cigarettes. She was a world-famous person. Cole Porter and Noel Coward put him in their songs.
Right. But she was known as Lady
Mendel. After 1926, she married a British diplomat. She was a lesbian, but she married a British diplomat named Sir Charles Mendel, who was the press attaché to the British Embassy in France. And everybody was sort of shocked and surprised that she had gone ahead and gotten married. Well, it's not shocking when you get to know about Elsie, because not only did it give her the title Lady Mendel, but she lived tax-free as the wife of a diplomat.
So there you were, back and forth. She was back and forth between England and France. How long did it take you to write this book?
I started thinking about the book almost 3 years ago.
Oh, that's
2 summers ago. 2 summers ago, I spent the whole summer in France writing the book and researching the book. I luckily, through my Condé Nast connections and friendships in museums, I knew several of the grandchildren of many of the people that were part of Paris Society in the 1930s.
So I was going to ask you about your current interviews, because you needed to have some interviews.
Well, there's only one person alive. The highlight of my book is in 1939, July 1st, 1939, at her house in Versailles called the Villa Trianon. She threw a 750-person ball, white tie, for all the glamorous international set, and 2 months later the war was declared.
You have all the background for us. Thank you, Charlie.
Oh, I really enjoy it. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you very much, and don't go away. We'll be right back with Aliah Whitmore. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're in the Hollywood Museum taping the show, and I'm here with award-winning director Aliah Whitmore, who grew up in a show business family in Thousand Oaks. She attended the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City and returned to Los Angeles to pursue a career in acting, directing, and producing. She's the founder and artistic director of Whitmore Eclectic and the director of Night Mother. So you lived in California, you went to New York, where everyone there is into theater and acting, and you specialized in acting at the Academy, and then you came back to LA.
I did.
Why?
I did. You know, I often ask myself that question. No, I'm joking.
Your family knew everyone here.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think that made a difference?
Absolutely. I came back because I wanted to start working with my father. My father, who has been my greatest advocate and inspiration and my greatest teacher.
Wow.
Especially for directing.
And your father is?
James Whitmore Jr.
And
he's a television director. But he also went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, so I kind of stumbled into his footsteps.
And James Whitmore goes back to?
He's my grandfather. James Whitmore Sr. is my grandfather, and James Whitmore Jr. is my father. And we all kind of came up in the mulch of the creative world. But coming back to LA and working in episodic TV with my father as an assistant, it was hugely educational. And I got to meet some really supportive, really creative people. But my father and I really, as much as he loves it, and we loved it, we wanted to explore something a little more experimental. And
you mean than just directing for TV?
And we wanted to come back to our roots in terms of live theater and trying some more fringe ideas and being more experimental and creating something from the ground up.
So that's how you got involved with Eclectic.
That's what was the impetus for the creation of Whitmore Eclectic.
But before that, your father was directing TV? Was he acting?
He still is. Yeah, he started as an actor. His first directing job was on a series called Hunter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was on the show, and then Stephen Cannell, the creator of that show.
Big Cannell stuff, right?
He gave him his shot at directing.
Oh, so that's what happened?
Yep.
And then your grandfather, tell us a little bit about his background.
Gramps was at Yale. He went to Yale on the GI Bill and discovered besides a love, a real powerful ability as an actor. And he was a very well-versed actor, obviously. He was a movie star.
Was he a stage actor as well?
But he was a stage actor at his core. That's what he started. He was in Peterborough, New Hampshire, doing a play which is a summer stock theater, kind of online with Ford's that era. And he got a call to do to audition for Command Decision, which he actually won the Tony Award for.
Oh, is that right? Oh, so how long was he on?
That run was not as long as some of the Broadway ones because they made a film of it.
Oh,
and he was in the film, and he was nominated for an Academy Award. And then he did.
What kind of role was that?
It was a World War II military.
And did your father play those kind of roles?
Absolutely.
And did you get to play those?
I haven't had a chance to play as much military. I think because of my nationality, I've been able to play more of an Arab genre, Eastern nationality genre on TV.
And why is that?
My mother is from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean.
Oh, really? So you have that dark, exotic look. And Whitmore doesn't really say that, does it?
No. No.
Whitmore says blonde and blue-eyed.
Not even close.
But so you get to play a different kind of character
Absolutely.
than people would expect.
Yeah. But directing has been, for me, the greatest expression of me, and I think the way my brain works.
and instead of acting, you have a brother.
I have two brothers. My brother Jacob is a production designer and has been working with the company since we started.
He's involved in show business too. Did he work in TV production like you?
He still does. He does production design, art direction, and property.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about starting in TV and working with your dad. What did you actually do? What did you have to do?
Oh, well, working with him, I was his assistant. So it's a wonderful job to have because it allows you to be right there in every concept meeting, every casting session. it becomes like an apprenticeship, where you really get to learn the ins and outs and the nuts and bolts of what it takes to direct a network television show, which is no small order. I mean, a network TV show is like a mini feature. I mean, they're so massive and there's so much detail.
People didn't give it that kind of quality love as a show business, I mean, or as a film kind of thing. But what you're saying is it really is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now...
Do you think you could direct a feature film from what you learned on TV production?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So, where did the eclectic part come in? Why start? Did both of your brothers go into it with you?
No, my eldest brother, Hundel, is a first AD. And he is actually right now in New Orleans working on NCIS New Orleans. He was the first on Sons of Anarchy. He's had a very, very, very successful career as a first assistant director.
And so you're all Whitmores.
We're all Whitmores.
You're all Whitmores.
Yeah, yeah. And then, but my sister's the black sheep. She's the only one who doesn't do anything in the.
She doesn't.
No.
But do they say, "Oh, here comes that Whitmore family," or do they go like, "Oh, here goes"? That
Well, I'd like to believe they go. Oh, that's my hope. Yeah, I think they do. No, I don't think that we're foreboding in any way.
Well, because sometimes they think like this is an old family, like the Houstons.
Sure, sure.
You know, it really carries on a tradition.
It does, but we, certainly our family is its own personality, and I can't really speak for the whole group. I think that certainly myself and my brother Jacob and my father and my mother.
Is your mother involved too?
My she's like the den mother. She's the
Oh, that's
ultimate
great.
supporter. She helps run front of house. She just participates and just kind of loves us through these projects. Mounting a stage production in a city like Los Angeles is a big endeavor.
And that's what we're talking about, Night Mother, which is what you're doing. So the whole family was kind of involved then.
Yes, this is actually the first production that I stepped away from the model that we had used. My brother and I did work on this together, but my father was a supporter and a contributing producer and a donor to the company. But two actresses from the Actors Studio, Silva Kalegian and Ellen Gersten, came to me with Night Mother almost a year ago, and said that they were interested in trying to mount the show, and they were curious if I would be interested in directing it.
Oh, that's what happened.
Yes.
So you didn't find it and then cast them.
No, they brought it to me.
That's
they cast
different,
me
isn't
as
it?
their director,
Yeah,
which is really flattering.
But is Whitmore Eclectic producing it then?
Yes, we are the
Oh, I
producing
see.
entity. We took it on as our project to produce it as one of our shows.
And that's like an ode to your grandfather, that group.
Yeah.
Whitmore,
This company was something, my grandfather, after he established himself and was a well-known film and television actor, he still wanted to build a theater company in LA.
Oh, so this is great.
And so closer to the end of his life, I got some really quality time with him where we just got to talk about what that was and what that motivation was, and that he still wanted to see it happen.
And his mission?
His mission,
that he said to you?
His belief was that art was a vehicle for education, and that the Living Theater was a really powerful platform for communication, and that also there was something special about theater and live art because there was no buffer. There was nothing separating the people witnessing it from the people that were creating it on the stage, and that without either element, it wasn't the same piece of work.
So when he did something on stage and then he made a film with it, it was two different things.
There were two different things.
Right.
And he was as powerful in both film and on stage,
Right.
but he had gravity. When he did so many one-man shows, and I still to this day when I watch Bully, which was the one-man show he did of Teddy Roosevelt, it takes my breath away. Because it's like an Iron Man competition.
Yeah, but you look at, I mean, it's amazing for you, it's your grandfather, but you're looking at him as a fantastic performer,
Totally.
right?
Absolutely. I mean, something even, maybe because he's my grandfather, I view him as something even more than that.
Yeah, bigger than
totally. Yeah.
I'm going to go on and ask you more about Night Mother, but when you were working with your dad, did you have any skirmishes?
Sure,
Oh, okay.
a little bit, but truthfully, he and I have learned. I mean, we've been doing it for a long time. I'll just put it this way: I'm his youngest child, and I'm a female.
Yes.
And I've directed him several times.
You have?
Yes.
Okay.
And he's open to me as a director, so that's a great gift. I
Yeah,
pat him on the back for being open to that.
Poor guy. But then let's go to Night Mother. So many people have done it on the stage.
Yep. Yep.
Who are those really famous people who have
Well,
done
the
it?
Kathy Bates
Yeah.
and Anne, I always mispronounce her last name. I said Patantic, I believe, debuted it on Broadway, and this was what Kathy Bates was kind of discovered doing this show. And
Oh, I see.
and then I know that there have been many incarnations of this show on big and small stages.
And in film.
Yeah.
So
and-
it's kind of interesting to remount it now.
Yeah, it was interesting because when we decided. So let me clarify too, just really quick. Ellen Gersten and Silva Kalagian brought the piece to me, and,
Right.
and Ellen was going to be playing the role of Thelma, the mother's character, until about 3 months ago, and she fell onto some medical issues that had to be dealt with immediately. And Lisa Richards
Oh,
had
so you have a new
stepped into her role. So Lisa's been playing the role, and unfortunately, it was really sad that Ellen couldn't join us. She stayed on as a supporter and a producer, but the cast as it is Lisa Richards and Silva Kalagian.
So then did you cast her?
This
Or was it all together?
Lisa, we were in a panic trying to figure out how to fill the role, and Lisa agreed to take the part. And from the time I met Lisa and from the first reading that we had, it was very clear that this woman was a very skilled, very powerful actress.
And where is it showing?
It's at the Law Studio. It's 130 South La Brea.
It's on La Brea. Where? La
in
Brea
between
what?
in between First and Second.
Oh, so that's cool. That's a really easy venue. And is it 99 or 49?
It's 99.
99?
Yeah, we have less seats. We're running at about 60 seats, but it's a equity waiver house. Yeah.
But could it go to different venues? Are you planning for it to go to different venues?
We've been lobbying for it. We're really trying to figure out what would be the path of least resistance to do that, because it's a very special production. Especially.
Why is it different? Because you're calling it really special, and we have a few minutes, a couple of minutes
It's different.
left.
It's different because of the intimacy, the level of intimacy the audience
You
gets
mean
to have with these two women. And I will say, as the director, that for me, it's about both of these women. It's about the relationship between a mother and her child, and a woman and her mother. It's about the unit that is a family. It's less about an individual, and it's more about how we are all organically connected. And without our mothers and fathers, we don't really have a sense of who we are and where we are.
And what's the gist of the story? There's two people on stage the whole
Two
time.
people on stage the whole time.
And you have to move them around?
We got to move them around. That has to happen.
And the lighting and...
Yeah, Lauren Seago, who is a student at Cal Arts, did our lighting. Jacob Whitmore, my brother, was our production designer.
So, and you have to move them to make it interesting, right?
Absolutely.
For
yeah.
the audience.
But also, it's such a intimate production that it's been about making it as organic as possible, and because the subject matter is so heavy.
And quickly, a little bit of the subject matter?
It's about suicide.
That's very heavy.
Yeah.
And with that, we're going to say goodbye.
Okay.
We'll come see it. It is really moving, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
very much.
Aliah.
All right.
And thank you for watching. Keep writing to JAQUINN1@AOL.com. And we thank Rick Miramontes from O&M Co. in New York for all of his help.